Yo, what's up, my brothers? Welcome back to Cat Recap. It's your Bo here, and today, we've got a story that is absolutely fire. Let's dive right into it. Hell's Paradise Season 2 kicks off in a dark and suffocating atmosphere. Shinkansen Island is no longer just a trial, it has become a true living hell, where the line between life and death begins to blur. Here, the fates of those who set foot on the island start to spiral out of control, dragging them into a whirlpool of unstoppable tragedy. Season 2 officially kicks off at the Shogunate, where Jigokuraku is summoned to report on his return from that mysterious island. Under intense interrogation from his superiors, he reluctantly recounts the whole story, from receiving the Shogun's orders to find the Elixir of Life, to the failed landing on Shinkansen Island with the death row convicts. The prisoner under his charge was killed before even setting foot on land, making Jigokuraku think he had cheated death. But fate is a cruel mistress. His boat was swept away by the waves, and in the end, he was dragged right back into that hellscape. What Jigokuraku witnessed there is something even he refuses to remember. He flatly denies giving any more details, leaving only one chilling warning. Shinkansen does not belong to the human world, and anyone heading back there is simply poking a hornet's nest. His attitude enrages the Shogunate, but knowing that the one who intervened was also part of the mission, they have no choice but to let it slide. A new decree, swiftly issued. The Yamada clan must once again send their people to Shinkansen to oversee the convicts and select new candidates. Jigokuraku knows all too well that no matter where they go, their lives are nothing more than sacrificial pawns. Then, Shugen is announced as the leader of the next group, the ninjas of Iwagakure village. To test their strength, the selected death row inmates are ruthlessly slaughtered on the spot, leaving only the foremost elite ninjas standing. The mission is set, and the cycle of blood begins again. The village chief gleefully accepts the order, claiming he is honored to assist the shogun. But he also hints that he left something behind on the island, a subtle reference to Gabimaru. Despite his reluctance to ever set foot in that hellhole again, Jigokuraku is once again ordered to depart in the coming days. Shugen's determination. Meanwhile, Shugen is moved to tears, consumed by worrying for Lord Amon. They should have received word by the second date, yet there has been nothing but silence from the others. Unable to just sit and wait, while his comrades' lives are on the line, Shugen decides the only way forward is to head to the island himself and finish the mission. The cliffhanger. Just then, a fisherman calls out, asking what to do with the thing they brought back. Jigokuraku initially considers showing it to his superiors, but the trade-off. Since the opportunity ever came, Jigokuraku decides to just get rid of it. To make up for the trouble, he promises to take the fisherman to the red light district for some fun. At that moment, Shugen reaches out to touch the creature, but he feels no life force. It's clearly dead. The new squad. The group soon meets their two companions for the upcoming journey. This squad was handpicked based on raw power, and it includes Jigokuraku as well. Even though he hasn't officially agreed yet, the entire team sets off for Shinkansen immediately. No time to waste is the vibe here. The mystery of Tao. The scene then shifts to the Tensen. One of them is explaining the true nature of Tao. Using Tao is essentially burning through your own life force, your very soul. The intrusion. Using Tao takes a heavy toll on the soul itself. Right then, Daofa walks in and demands they stop discussing such complex matters. The others immediately bow their heads in apology, but she just laughs it off, saying she was only joking. She's clearly excited because the new training hall is finally complete. The training hall, when asked for his opinion, Rin confirms it's magnificent. By practicing various movements and mastering breathing techniques, both underwater and on land, complemented by music to deepen meditation, the training is more intense than ever. The nearby chamber is also perfect for focused cultivation. The conflict of philosophy, however, some don't seem to value it at all, arguing that staying in a state of neutrality like him is enough. As for the essence of Tao. The nature of Tao takes on a unique form depending on the life force of its owner. That's why, when you clash in battle with others, it unlocks new layers of power within your Tao. Right at that moment, one of them gets so overwhelmed by the sensation that they successfully awaken their new ability, the elixir and the switch. Shugen is praised for doing an excellent job. On the way out, Daofa asks if any more elixir is needed and hands over some of the freshly pressed batch. However, she realizes she forgot to add the luminescent substance and asks Shugen where it is. But as usual, he couldn't care less. The scene then shifts to where Sagiri. The hideout. The scene shifts to where Sagiri and three others are laying low. She tells everyone they need to head to the main gate. But looking at the outfits the other three are wearing, she's just completely speechless. Yuzuriha, on the other hand, thinks the clothes are actually pretty cute. Decides, walking around in bloodstained gear would attract way too much unwanted attention. The plan. Their immediate goal is to reunite with Gabimaru and Mei. If the Shogunate's objective is the Elixir of Life, they'll definitely end up at this castle. Waiting out by the gate seems like a smart move, but Purple Hair isn't feeling it. She questions if the mission to find the elixir is even still a thing. I mean, The island is crawling with terrifying monsters, not to mention those Tensen freaks. The reality check, she believes the mission is a lost cause at this point. The best move is to get out of here as fast as possible, or they're all going to end up dead. The truth behind the mask, despite all that, Sagiri is still set on heading out. She realizes that Yuzuriha's words aren't her true feelings. Yuzuriha has been acting this way ever since she found out the Elixir of Life might not exist, just a defense mechanism, in case they return empty-handed. She wants to use Aemon as a shield against the shogunate to avoid execution. At the end of the day, she's just looking out for herself. The bond of trust. Even so, Sagiri still puts her faith in her friend. She declares, "We're leaving this island together." That hasn't changed. She even goes as far as ... To mutual trust, Sagiri feels a sense of relief knowing Yuzuriha is being rational. If they leave together, including Gabimaru and Purple Hair. The only thing Sagiri worries about is whether that young man can actually make it to their location. But Yuzuriha is certain he'll show up soon. Back with our main protagonist, Gontetsu Sai asks once more if climbing this way will truly lead them to the castle. Mei confirms it will, but Gabimaru's head is spinning. He's completely lost, and his memories have yet to return. Based on what the others are saying, the mission they're on is utterly absurd. The identity crisis, he has no idea why he even took this job in the first place. Was it simply an order, or was there something more? A blurred image of his wife flashes in his mind, but he still can't quite grasp it. Fuchi asks if he's okay, noticing he looks a bit pale. But right at that moment, the atmosphere shifts. Two powerhouses come face to face. They lock eyes in a deadly stare down. Given the current situation ... The unlikely allies. Under normal circumstances, humans should be allies. However, as a Chobai strikes first without hesitation, it was a devastating blow, but Gabimaru manages to block it just in time. Fuchi tries to bring up the idea of cooperation, but Toma knows his brother isn't the type to play nice. Without warning, the golden-haired warrior lunges at our protagonist. The counterattack. Chobai is momentarily overwhelmed by Gabimaru's sheer speed, and in a flash, his neck is snapped. But Mei senses something is wrong. She warns them that this man's Dao is massive and they must be extremely careful. Before she can even finish, Chobai stands right back up and slams Gabimaru into the ground. Neither side has any interest in working together. The immortal monster. The young ninja wonders if this is the immortal monster ruling the island and that the others mentioned. Seeking more information, he tries to restrain his opponent. But Chobai is far from weak. He continues to smash Gabimaru into the earth. Just when it looks like it's over, Gabimaru let out a chilling laugh, vowing to tear him to pieces just like he always does. Ninjutsu unleashed, he activates his ninjutsu, Flower Needle, unleashing a barrage of strikes at his opponent's pressure points. He believes that if he can destroy Chobai's senses, even an immortal must fall. Unfortunately, Chobai remains standing firm. Despite having his eyes gouged out, his wounds are already beginning to heal. The primal clash, the wounds heal almost instantly. Seeing this, Gabimaru lunges in again, sinking his teeth into his opponent's neck and severing the artery. This savage style of fighting leaves the onlookers stunned. It's like watching two wild beasts tearing each other apart. The silver-haired ninja thinks to himself, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. An Niwa Gakure ninja will keep attacking until the enemy drops. Yet, the man before him heals fatal wounds as if they were nothing. The counterattack, Chobai scoffs, saying he expected more from Gabimaru and let himself get hit on purpose, but now he mocks him for being weak. With that, Chobai launches a relentless counterattack. Still, Gabimaru's primal biting strikes remain incredibly deadly. Gontetsu Sai notices something is off. Gabimaru doesn't seem like his usual self. He asks the young lady if being knocked unconscious made him weaker. But Mei isn't sure. The missing piece, his Dao is strange right now. In this world, being strong isn't enough. You must balance strength with weakness. Currently, Gabimaru lacks the seed of true power. He is missing something vital. As strange sensations flood his mind, the two of them clash once more. And then ... The reckless fighter. The only thing Chobai has going for him is that he isn't afraid to die, which makes him fight with reckless abandon. He shouts for Toma to slaughter everyone else and get it over with. Taking the order, Toma attacks Gontetsu Sai first, assuming the old man is weak. But he's about to get a painful lesson in why you should never judge a book by its cover. The master's lesson, a heavy blow rains down, leaving Toma dazed and confused. Fuchi asks the dragon blade to stop, thinking Toma might have his reasons. But Gontetsu Sai doesn't give a damn if someone disrespects him. He's going to teach them some manners. Toma lunges again with his blade, only to get punched in the face once more. Even so, the dragon blade is secretly impressed by the kid's speed. The stubborn spirit, he starts lecturing Toma, pointing out his flaws while continuing to land punches. But the kid is stubborn. He refuses to back down. He declares that if his brother won't cooperate, he'll stand by his brother's side no matter what. Plus, he admits he just plain hates ... The hypocrisy. Toma spits out his hatred for factions and cliques, claiming that for bandits, everyone is just a sacrificial pawn. Gontetsu Sai just scoffs, if the two of you stick together like glue, doesn't that make you a faction too? Suddenly, Toma's aura shifts. He cold-bloodedly orders the Daos to kill the dwarf and the little girl standing nearby. Additionally, Asa Chobai gained the upper hand because, by harnessing a power called Dao, he could read Gabimaru's movements and even regenerate his own wounds. Normally, one would be consumed by the Dao, but since he didn't acquire it through conventional training, he remained unaffected. The silver-haired shinobi was currently cornered. Refusing to back down, he forced himself to suppress the mounting discomfort. His ascetic flame flared up, driven by the creed that a ninja must not die easily. At the very least, they must inflict a fatal blow on the enemy before falling. Although Chobei possessed immortality, he was starting to lose his wind. Seeing Gabimaru's readiness to trade his life for a strike, he didn't flinch, and just like that, he was ... As Gabimaru's flames engulfed his entire body, Chobei couldn't regenerate in time. He barked out a question, asking if Gabimaru intended to die with him. Without hesitation, the bow replied that if he fell, the village would simply send a replacement. He himself had nothing left to lose. However, Chobei countered, could someone seeking life truly be defeated by someone who has already accepted death? These words struck a nerve. Driven by the need to protect his younger brother, Chobei chose to cast aside his own humanity. In an instant, he transformed, taking on the appearance of a literal demon. Round 2 of the battle between Gabimaru and Chobei had officially begun. The man muttered about his body shattering into pieces while relentlessly lashing out at Yuzuriha with his tentacles. The overwhelming pressure forced Gabimaru to stay on the defensive, using his ninjutsu to launch counterattacks whenever possible. However, since his opponent was now in his most powerful form, Gabimaru's efforts were futile, and the protagonist quickly fell into a disadvantageous position. He pushed his body to the limit to strike back, unleashing a colossal flame that left everyone nearby in a state of alarm. After that burst, Gabimaru was exhausted, while Chobei remained trapped deep within his own ego. Everything around him was a void of darkness. With no way out, he wondered what this place was and where his enemy had disappeared to. He had no memory of losing control. He only knew that whenever he looked into the vortex, his rage intensified, causing his body on the outside to resume its relentless assault. Gantetsusa, witnessing this, wondered why the protagonist wasn't using his Tao. The answer was that Gabimaru could no longer tap into it. He had completely forgotten how, conversely, his opponent's Tao was so overwhelming that defeat seemed inevitable. Inside his mind, the young man understood that his life was forfeit. However, knowing that other ninjas from the village would arrive to take his place, he resolved to inflict the maximum possible damage on his opponent. Just as he was about to resort to a self-destructive move, a hand suddenly rested on his shoulder to stop him. The warm voice of his wife called out, yet it failed to wake him from his trance. Gabimaru let out a desperate cry and charged forward once more, attempting to incinerate his enemy. As a result, his own body began to break down, covered in wounds. Gantetsusa, the Great Blade, seeing the kid truly intent on throwing his life away, was utterly bewildered. After all, his goal was to earn a royal pardon, so choosing suicide was truly bizarre. There was only one possibility. Both of them had completely lost themselves. Toma wondered why his brother would go to such extremes, and then the answer became clear. Previously, Gantetsusa had mocked him for always relying on his brother, pointing out that his unscarred face was proof enough of his dependence. Toma burst into tears, realizing his brother was fighting a desperate battle to the death for his sake, while he felt utterly unworthy. The blonde youth, consumed by fury, lunged forward, intent on killing Gabimaru. Just as his eyes were being swallowed by darkness, he suddenly heard his younger brother's voice. Looking back, he saw that Toma's arm had been pierced. Toma apologized, sobbing because he had mistakenly thought they were fighting together. It broke his heart to realize his brother had been fighting all alone. Because he was weak and unreliable, his brother had been forced to push himself. Toma desperately hoped that Chobei would regain his consciousness and return to his human self. Seizing the moment while the opponent's guard was down, Gabimaru lunged forward, intending to incinerate both of them right then and there. Seeing this, Mei rushed in to intervene. She realized that if he exerted himself one more time, Gabimaru would die because his Tao was completely depleted. This time, she was forced to activate her power, causing the very ground beneath them to collapse. The sheer force of the impact made Gabimaru falter. As the blonde youth fell, he finally regained his senses and threw his younger brother back up to safety, shouting for him to wait for him. As for Mei, something unexpected happened after she pushed her powers to the limit. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl's body began to develop in a way that looked remarkably attractive. Gantetsusa commented on how adorable she was, while Fuji suggested that dissecting her would immediately reveal the underlying issue. The entire situation was shrouded in mystery, leaving them all bewildered. At the same time, Sagiri's group stepped outside, and they were stunned by the sight before them. Shin picked up strange sounds, sensing that demons or devils were lurking nearby. If the mysteries of this island were merely illusions, who had created them, and by what means? Hoko, the tree man, began to imagine scenes of living beings being subjected to experiments. A profound sense of wrongness permeated the entire island. Yet, perhaps these humans, capable of slaying a Tensen, are the ones who will change the island forever. However, he wondered whether he would still be able to maintain his sanity by then. Upon reaching the main gate, the two teams finally crossed paths. Sagiri was overcome with worrying the moment she saw the wounds covering Gabimaru's body. Meanwhile, Toma found himself tied up. Fuji began to inquire about the Tensen and the strange outfits they were wearing. Hoko then turned to Yuzuriha and asked if she had tapped into that power again. The blonde youth was stunned to find that a literal log could actually speak. Hoko expressed his gratitude for being allowed to see the pink-haired girl once more. When asked about the monsters, Gantetsusa boasted that they had slaughtered them all and even brought back a doused along with them. Fuji added that there were two others as well. Hoko now felt a renewed sense of hope. For 1,000 years, this was the first time such a group had gathered those who had slain Soshin, killed Taoists, and even struck down gods. Perhaps what they brought to the island was more than just mere change. A short while later, Fuji visited his friend's grave and burst into tears. The three of them had been incredibly close, and he couldn't hold back his emotions. The two groups exchanged information, revealing that only 8 survivors remained, less than half of those who originally set foot on the island. Gontetsusa remarked, in his own way, that Miss Curvy Yuzuriha was still alive and kicking. Meanwhile, Shin suggested that they should stay far away from this castle. However, Gabimaru remained unconscious. Yuzuriha looked so pitiful that Sagiri rushed over to embrace her. It had only been 3 days, yet the casualties were already this high. Gontetsusa told them there was no need for pity, reminding everyone that they were originally supposed to kill each other until only one remained. There was never any plan to play friends and return together. Gontetsusa then brought up Tama's betrayal, stating that if no one had any further questions, he would just kill the brat and get it over with. Sagiri spoke up immediately, demanding he stop. She believed Toma had his own reasons, but more importantly, she refused to let anyone else die in front of her. Gontetsusa, seeing her resolve, gave a word of praise before the two of them started posturing and threatening each other. Yuzuriha cut in, asking if the protagonist was okay, as he looked like he was at death's door. Sagiri wanted to take him for treatment immediately because his injuries were so severe. In truth, Gontetsusa had actually punched Gabimaru earlier because he had lost control and gone on a rampage. Shin explained that overusing Da had left Gabimaru's body completely exhausted. Fuji noted that although he had tried everything, the wounds wouldn't heal. It was highly likely that something had damaged his very life core. A second later, the young man regained consciousness, but he had no idea who the people in front of him were. Wanting to grasp the situation first, he pretended everything was normal. When Sagiri tried to show her concern, he brushed her hand away, declaring that he didn't care whether he lived or died. Suspecting something was wrong, she immediately asked him who he was. He replied, "I am Gabimaru the Hollow," and launched an attack. According to Sagiri, his memories had been scrambled due to the effects of Da. Shin checked and confirmed that his soul was being eroded. Because she understood the real Gabimaru so well, she realized through his words that this was no longer the man she knew. Sagiri then stepped forward, requesting that the task of waking him up be left to her. The sight of her slowly approaching stirred something deep within him. Sagiri reasoned that by applying a compatible doubt to his body, she might be able to help Gabimaru recover his memories. She softly asked him to lower his guard. Just as she was about to introduce herself, she paused, recalling the images of their journey together. Now, she could say with absolute confidence that they were close companions. The boy, however, remained stubborn and refused to listen. Seeing that a gentle approach wasn't working, Sagiri changed her tactic and promptly slammed him to the ground. Gabimaru was caught off guard by just how strong she was. Sagiri blushed, thinking to herself that the term companion didn't quite capture the depth of their bond. She continued to provoke him, forcing him to exert his strength, all while maintaining a stable flow of doubt to channel into him. Despite his constant struggling, he found himself powerless to resist. Mei watched the scene in pure amazement. Through their physical contact, the Tao began to circulate and restore itself. She never expected to see this side of Sagiri. Remarkably, the Tao of the two was perfectly compatible. Gabimaru finally began to calm down, feeling his strength gradually returning to him. Sagiri called out, "If you want to return home, we must all cooperate. More importantly, don't you have someone waiting for you to reunite with?" These words directly triggered his memories of his wife, bringing everything back to him. Meanwhile, Asachobai suffered a stroke of bad luck, falling from a great height and leaving his body completely mangled. Fortunately, his overpowered regeneration kept him from dying. He recalled the moment he was nearly consumed by the Tao. This power was dangerously beyond his understanding. However, he realized that if he could master it, he would be unstoppable. A split second later, a swarm of monsters suddenly appeared. Back with the other group, they ventured deep into the cavern, feeling remarkably confident that the area was safe. Shin warned them, however, that the Tensen don't need eyes to sense their presence. Gontetsusa felt that being so fearful of them was a bit much. Yuzuriha explained, "Of course we have to be afraid. No matter how many times you slash them, they won't die. It took 5 of us working together just to take one down. Soon enough, the others will find out and come seeking revenge." Gabimaru, having regained his senses, recounted his encounter with one of them at the gate. Though he had only recovered a fraction of his memories, it was enough for now. Having fully grasped the nature and power of Tao, he understood more than ever just how terrifying the Tensen truly were. Yuzuriha urged them to leave immediately, as staying was far too dangerous. The young man, however, needed something more like the royal pardon. Hearing this, Yuzuriha, the purple-haired girl, let Sagiri reveal the harsh truth. He might have been under an illusion, creating a wife who doesn't even exist. The village chief had used that method to keep Gabimaru under his control. Gabimaru remained composed, stating that everything would be clear once they returned to the mainland. To everyone's surprise, his ultimate goal was still the Elixir of Life. Moreover, he firmly believed his wife was real. He admitted he wasn't good with words or expressing himself, so he simply described his feelings about her. Her voice was high-pitched yet calm and gentle. Her eyes would narrow slightly whenever she smiled. Her fingers were long and slender, and even her hair carried a sweet fragrance. Even now, he could still feel her presence. Yui, that was her name, and he firmly asserted that she was no illusion. Hearing this, Sagiri looked genuinely pleased. Gontetsusa praised Gabimaru, calling him a true man for being willing to drag everyone into this mess, all for the sake of his wife. Shin could sense a powerful Tao within that small frame, noting that those who still have something to lose are always the strongest. Meanwhile, Asachobai had finished slaughtering the entire pack of monsters, though he complained that they didn't taste very good. Right then, another Tensen arrived. He addressed the blonde youth as an outsider and demanded to know if he was the one who had killed Mudan. The battle erupted instantly. Ran launched a surprise attack that left Asachobai infuriated. The Tensen, however, grew even more intrigued, finding the blonde youth's regenerative abilities truly impressive. Meanwhile, Fuchi released the dying Taoist, having lost all desire for further bloodshed. When he returned to the cave, he found everyone deeply worried about Yuzuriha. Initially, they thought it was just ordinary exhaustion, but her condition was rapidly deteriorating. Hoko asked what the pink-haired girl really was, only to discover she was now the same type as a Tensen. Just moments ago, they had all witnessed that overwhelming, godlike power firsthand. For the time being, the blonde youth could only produce a simple medicine to bring down the fever. In exchange, Fuchi demanded more information regarding the Tensen. After losing their ally, the blonde youth's companion felt a deep sense of bitterness, finally realizing how grave the situation had become. He wanted to know what beings like the little girl truly were, and what the Tensen's ultimate goal was. Yuzuriha noted that Mei's communication skills were poor, but Fuchi claimed he had already become proficient at translating for her. Meanwhile, Gabimaru pulled the other for outside, asking for their help to train his Tao. Since regaining his memories, his combat instincts felt dull, so he needed to warm up by having all four of them attack him at once. Hearing this, Gontetsusa was pretty ticked off at the brat, feeling like he was being treated as nothing more than a punching bag. Toma was also provoked. Gabimaru told him that if he wanted to kill him, he was more than welcome to try. Shin threatened that if Gabimaru tried anything suspicious, he wouldn't hesitate to strike for real. Nurugai, too, was eager to go all out against her mentor. Once the deal was struck, Gontetsusa let Toma use his sword, while he opted to fight barehanded, ready to give the kid a thorough thrashing. Meanwhile, Gabimaru reflected on his battles with Asachobai and the Taoist. He knew that relying too heavily on Tao was dangerous, but failing to master it would make defeating the Tensen impossible. The best course of action now was to find a way to use it efficiently. Before they began, he even managed to pull off a comedic moment by bowing and thanking them for their help. Gontetsusa was beyond annoyed and charged straight at him. However, Toma's sword was faster, slashing directly downward. Gabimaru moved with fluid agility, dodging every strike while reminding himself not to rely on his eyes, but to sense everything through Tao. Gontetsusa then closed the gap and threw a slicing hand strike. The protagonist went with the flow, executing a backflip to evade the slash, while looking for a chance to counterattack. He knew that using ordinary strength wouldn't be enough to damage that old man's wall of muscle. However, if he struck directly at the weak points in his Tao, the result would be entirely different. Even a frail body could deliver a devastating blow. When it came to mastery of Tao, they could never hope to surpass the Tensen. After all, those monsters had been honing their craft for 1,000 years. Gabimaru then used Toma's own momentum to counterattack, instantly sending the other three flying backward. He intended to weaponize the surrounding Tao for his counter-strikes. The greater the force exerted against him, the more powerful his damage reflection would become. His plan was to turn the Tensen's own Tao against them. The younger brother was astonished, thinking that a technique like that might actually be enough to kill a Tensen. However, Gabimaru replied that they weren't there yet. Shin finally realized just how immense the protagonist's potential truly was. It was highly possible that Gabimaru could reach the same level as a Tensen. Nevertheless, Shin remained uncertain whether relying on a death row convict was a wise idea. The silver-haired man then shared what he had discovered. After observing the Tao, he realized there are many different types, each with its own unique attributes and levels of compatibility. If we can take advantage of that, we might even be able to kill those immortals. At that moment, Toma felt a wave of humiliation for being so weak. He bowed before Gontetsusa, pleading for guidance. What Toma sought was practical swordsmanship, not for the sake of revenge, but to survive this place on his own terms. He even cut his long, feminine hair short as a sign of his resolve. Although he still disliked Gontetsusa, his desire to learn was genuine. After hearing him out, the old man simply told him to do as he pleased. And so, they headed off to a separate area to begin their training. Back with the older brother, Asachobai found himself outmatched by Ran, realizing that this opponent was the same kind as the one before. The fire within the blonde youth surged even more fiercely to the point where his opponent actually clapped in admiration, noting how incredibly distorted Chobai's Tao had become. The Tensen wondered how he was somehow still able to maintain his consciousness. Ren continued to gather strength for an attack, stating that he wanted to test Chobai a bit more before deciding whether to kill him or not. The blonde youth watched the incoming strike and struggled to dodge it. He knew that to take this monster down, he would have to enter that state again. However, he hesitated, fearing he might lose himself entirely. The more he struggled, the stronger Asachobai became. The blonde youth let his Tao explode, knowing that if he didn't go all out, death was the only certainty. The sensation of the transformation felt like tree roots spreading rapidly throughout his entire body. To prevent himself from losing consciousness, he used absolute focus to maintain control. Round to begin immediately, Chobai charged at the Tensen like a demon, launching a frenzied assault. His power had clearly reached a new level, easily wounding his opponent. Seizing the opportunity, the blonde youth lunged forward once more, racing against time before his sanity slipped away. He confidently pierced through the navel, believing it to be the Tensen's weak point. Ran's body instantly disintegrated. While Chobai was still reeling from the shock, thinking the battle was over, he realized he was wrong. The one he had just fought was merely a clone that Ran had created. The Tensen was ecstatic, seeing that even after awakening his Tao, as a Chobai managed to maintain his consciousness. This was something that had never happened before. The purple-haired entity admitted that he originally only intended to scout them out, but since this prey was so enticing, he decided to take matters into his own hands personally. The blonde youth was infuriated after being called beautiful. Just as he was about to strike his opponent, his body reached its absolute limit. If he pushed any further, the chances of him dying were extremely high. Ran, not wanting that to happen, helped force Asa Chobai back into his human form. While drifting in and out of consciousness, Chobai thought of Tomo, vowing that he wasn't like his old man and would definitely return to his brother's side. When he finally came to, he found himself in a garden, and the Tensen from before had now transformed into a woman. When he asked what she intended to do, she replied that his body was incredibly precious. The Tao within him was perfectly controlled. Such a phenomenon hadn't occurred in over 1,000 years. The blonde youth was to become the key subject for her research. Sensing that his opponent was trying to play with him, he demanded an explanation. She obliged, explaining that this was their method of circulating Tao, which would help him restore his depleted reserves. Crucial information was revealed. Tao consists of 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. These attributes influence one another in a cycle known as generative Van, overcoming mutual generation and destruction. This technique would be utterly useless if there were no harmony between the two parties. The Tensen were born during these experiments. By fusing the Tao of humans with a type of hermaphroditic plant, they became capable of strengthening their own Tao through the practice of yin and yang. The reason they remain hidden on this island is to focus entirely on their cultivation. Like meditation, Tao requires absolute silence. Furthermore, they received information confirming that the Tensen are indeed in the process of concocting the Elixir of Life. Tan is merely a crude, experimental prototype. Human lives are harvested like honey, and the Tensen absorb their Tao, or in other words, their life force. Even the high Tensen prolong their existence using Tan. If they lose a massive amount of Tao in a short period, even a Tensen will die. Unfortunately, the enemy currently possesses an abundant supply of Tan. Once they perfect the method of immortality, they will carry out the ultimate wish of their creator. Zhou is the name of the Fanshi alchemist who brought the high Tensen into existence. During the Qin dynasty, he served Qin Shi Huan and embarked on a quest for immortality. Along with 3,000 young men and women, he set sail toward the eastern seas. It is hard to believe that a figure from over 1,000 years ago is still on this island. Meanwhile, Chobai was also being told the same story. Both she and the others were artificial creations. The Tensen were born from the fusion of the Grandmaster's Tao and the flowers. In a sense, they can be considered a family. When he asked if they intended to turn everyone on the island into the Elixir of Life, he learned that their true target was actually the entire human race across the globe. The preparations were already complete. They were now simply waiting for the final, perfect batch of Tan. Chobai was offered a seat among the Tensen if he agreed to cooperate with their research. Finding himself in a tight spot, the young man realized that open resistance would be foolish. Instead, he pinned his opponent down and began to perform the ritual to circulate Tao. The blonde youth's motto was never to resist the circumstances, but to adapt and then devour them. Dak with MEI, her arm had already begun to transform, making the situation even worse. Because her body was imperfect, every time she used Tao, her body would undergo arborization, turning into wood. Previously, her ovule had been destroyed by Ran, meaning she couldn't use the same circulation technique as Gabimaru to recover. They were the very first disciples created by the grandmother. However, that man had changed. He slaughtered countless people just to refine the outer elixir. Why Dan? She had been unable to stop him, so she fled the place. At this point, Hoko made a request to use his own Tao, as the high Tensen could freely manipulate Tao, as well as seize it from other living beings and make it their own. He was content to do this, even if it meant his own death. The pink-haired girl MEI stubbornly refused, but he advised her otherwise. He recounted the time he first met the little girl about 100 years ago. He once had a wife and a daughter of his own, but they had both succumbed to arborization and turned into trees. By the time he was left all alone, his own body had already begun to transform. He thought that his life would end there, but then he encountered MEI. Seeing that the little girl resembled his late daughter, he took her in. Of course, he knew the pink-haired girl wasn't an ordinary human. He ignored all the warning signs just to continue playing the part of a family. He finally apologized for forcing MEI to live a life for over 100 years. Now, he saw this as his final chance for atonement by offering his Tao for her to use. MEI cried out, telling him that the feelings they shared weren't a lie, they were real. With that, the Tao was activated, helping the pink-haired girl recover and return to her child form. Tears streaming down her face, she whispered her final goodbye. Goodbye, Papa. The scene shifts to the second group of soldiers sent to the island to retrieve the Elixir of Life. Shugen and for elite ninjas all held in high regard by the Shogun are expected to complete the mission. In total, more than 50 people have now made landfall on the island. However, having too many factions involved wasn't necessarily a good thing, as the ninja leader surely had his own hidden motives for agreeing to help. Shugen asked Aki what was troubling him, only to be questioned in return whether Shugen alone could keep everyone there under control. Furthermore, the two individuals accompanying them held no official rank. He explained that the small bow, Kiyomaru, lacked a rank simply because he wasn't of age yet. As for Isuzu, despite being a woman, she was capable of wielding a massive greatsword. In short, both were incredibly strong, so there was no need for concern. As for Lord Jika's skills, they were beyond question. For the sake of his comrades, Shugen vowed to give his absolute best. The young boy stepped forward to challenge them, saying that if they didn't believe in him, they were welcome to try him. He even confidently claimed he was capable of cutting down the ninjas. The moment he spoke, his challenge was accepted. Kiyomaru managed to slice off a piece of a ninja's mask, yet the opponent didn't even bother to flinch. Seeing this, the blonde woman had to intervene, telling the boy to stop being so disrespectful. As they began to bicker, the leader of the ninjas stepped in to de-escalate, advising them not to clash over people like them. He stated that since their lives belonged to their master, they were fine with whatever happened to them. Upon hearing that, the young boy demanded he prove his words were true. The opponent agreed and handed over the leadership duties to the ninja whose mask had been sliced. Immediately after, that man performed a ritual to log out and end his own life right in front of everyone. For these ninjas, there is no such thing as will or heart. They are merely tools to be used, nothing more. Prior to this, the village chief had assigned these men a specific mission, to infiltrate the island landing party and assassinate Gabimaru. He believed that unless the protagonist was killed, this whole ordeal would never truly come to an end. Kiyomaru asked his senior if it was truly alright to trust those ninjas. Shugen firmly stated that he had never placed an ounce of trust in them, therefore, they would handle everything themselves. He declared that any criminal found on the island would be executed on the spot. After saying this, he burst into tears, vowing that he would definitely bring the assailant back home. With that, the entire group made landfall and faced the monsters of the island. Despite the chaos, Shugen demonstrated his formidable prowess. Meanwhile, the group inside the cave had also received word that a second landing party was being sent their way. Aizen had chosen Shugen as the backup team under orders from the shogunate. Everyone there knew that the young man was incredibly powerful. Sagiri felt a sense of pride for her comrade, stating that he was the strongest member of the Yamada clan. Gontetsu saw mused that masterful swordsmanship alone wouldn't be enough to survive on this island of monsters. One would need to use Dao or something similar. However, according to Shin, it seemed that Shugen had already perceived Dao back when they trained together. Shugen had even recognized Shien's heightened senses. He was a man of sincerity and a thirst for knowledge. At that moment, Shugen asked Isuzu to hold his sword for him. Since the blade was a gift from the shogun, he believed it shouldn't be sold by such lowly opponents. Just like that, he lunged forward and delivered a devastating kick that completely mangled the monster. Because of his thirst for knowledge, he had mastered and applied the techniques of other members, such as Fujianshin. By observing Dao, he could discern the vital structure of his opponents, allowing him to deliver finishing blows with zero effort. Due to his overwhelming strength, Shugen was held in high regard by everyone. However, Shin noted that the man possessed a disturbing flaw. Even Yuzuriha had heard of his name because of a horrific mission he once carried out. Sagiri also broke into a cold sweat just thinking about it. She explained that her friend was merely a bit too rigid. She had heard that when the underworld boss, Jinga, was captured, he refused to reveal the location of his subordinate's hideout. When Shugen was tasked with extracting the information, he did the unthinkable. He beheaded one of the subordinates right before the boss's eyes. To force the boss to speak, he went on to slaughter 20 more members of the Jinga clan. Amused by this display, the shogun bestowed upon him special attire and a prize sword. Despite massacring so many people, Sagiri maintained that, at his core, he is still a kind-hearted person. Fuchi added that Shugen was actually Sagiri's first love. Embarrassed, she clarified that it was only when they were children, and not anymore. She owed her current position to Shugen's recommendation. He had wept while pleading for her to be granted a rank, declaring that he could never take pride in his own status if his friend were left behind. Meanwhile, back on the beach, Shugen had already wiped out all the monsters. He spoke gently to his comrades, telling them there was no need for them to lift a finger. "Leave the dirty work of staining one's blade to your senior," he said. Hearing this, the blonde girl Isuzu and the young boy Kiyomaru were deeply moved. Sagiri thought to herself that if Shugen only understood the true situation, he would surely help them. Shin immediately dismissed that thought. He understood Shugen better than anyone. The story about the slaughter of 20 people was actually missing many details. Shugen didn't just kill 20 gangsters. He executed their entire family's relatives, parents, and children, people who were completely uninvolved. In total, over 100 lives were taken just to extract information from the boss. Shugen himself felt the tragedy of it all, yet he believed he was forced to do it for the greater good. In his eyes, evil is not born from the soul, but from one's environment. He believed that if those children were allowed to grow up in the arms of criminals, they would inevitably become evil themselves. Therefore, he chose to end them before they ever had the chance to turn wicked. This act was so barbaric that even the gang boss no longer viewed Shugen as a human being. Thus, Shin could confirm with certainty that his former friend would never show mercy to any death row convict, regardless of the circumstances. Even those harboring or protecting criminals would face the same fate. Once he grasps the situation on the island, his twisted, ruthless nature will undoubtedly surface. At that very moment, Shugen discovered the lifeless body of the person he cherished most. As a child, he was taken in while grieving the loss of his family. He longed for the day he could find and kill the person who murdered his parents using a blunt sword, so that they would feel every ounce of pain before dying. Aizen was the one who helped him let go of that hatred, despite how difficult it was. But now, the light of his life was gone. Shugen burst into tears and was advised to push forward with the mission to save the others. He agreed, but insisted on burying Lord Aizen first. And so, they carried the body to the beach to perform the funeral rites. The ninjas found this group truly bizarre. Surrounded by monsters on the lethal island, they actually had the nerve to sit there and chant sutras. But when it came to strangeness, Jika gave off the most unsettling vibe of all. At the very least, thanks to these people, they would be able to complete their assigned mission. She believed that Gabimaru wouldn't die easily on this island. At that moment, more monsters emerged and snatched up several ninjas. The doused priest controlling the creatures also revealed himself, completely surrounding the entire landing party. The blonde youth effortlessly diverted the attacks of the giant monster. Meanwhile, the young bow lunged forward, spinning his blade to decapitate the beast. Watching them, the female ninja was struck by their masterful swordsmanship and felt the need to prove her own value. Upon receiving orders, the ninjas coordinated their movements. While they lacked individual raw power, their ability to support one another was exceptional. They relied on their numbers to complete difficult missions. No matter how skilled an opponent might be, they could never withstand a swarm of ninjas. This is the essence of how low-ranking ninjas fight. By then, Shugen had finished chanting the sutras, and in an instant, he obliterated one of the monsters. He declared that if justice no longer existed, then he would willingly fall into depravity. Casting aside Aizen's teachings, he began to intentionally damage his own blade. His sole objective was to ensure his enemies suffered the most agonizing deaths possible. Hearing this, the Taoist priest became intensely intrigued and stepped forward to challenge him. He sought to ascend to the rank of Earth Disciple, but his luck had run out. In the blink of an eye, every single one of his monsters had been slaughtered. The Taoist priest's regenerative abilities had their limits, and he eventually found himself buried in the ground by Shugen. Shugen demanded answers, threatening to carve him up agonizingly if he refused. Before the priest could even respond to the first question, Shugen had already slashed him twice. Jika then had to intervene, requesting that they bring the prisoner back to the mainland. However, the young man refused, accusing Jika of simply wanting an excuse to go home. When criticized for not drawing his sword, Jika claimed he was incapable of it. Seeing the tension rise, the blonde girl Isuzu stepped in to stop their bickering. Shugen bowed his head, apologizing for losing his temper. The mission would proceed so as not to defile the honor of Lord Aizen. The female ninja stepped forward, offering to take over the interrogation since extracting information was their specialty. Back with the group inside the cave, they were currently overwhelmed by a multitude of concerns. Shin proposed splitting into two teams, one to search for the Elixir of Life, and the other to find an escape route. He had already devised a way to counter the Tensen. By cross-referencing information with MEI, the silver-haired man Gabimaru was able to map out a formula to combat Tao. Since this power possesses elemental attributes that either strengthen or weaken one another, mutual generation and overcoming, they could exploit these cycles to neutralize the enemy, while simultaneously bolstering their own strengths. Yuzuriha, still fearing for her life, suggested that leaving the island altogether would be the better option. Shin did not object to her view. After all, they were just a group of people pushed into a difficult situation by circumstances. That's why he wanted to divide them into two teams. He simply said that anyone determined to move forward should gather inside the cave. To everyone's surprise, they all went back inside. Even Yuzuriha, who just wanted to go home. Gontetsusai declared his desire to eliminate a few Tensen. Everyone on the others had their own reasons the Elixir of Life. So, survive. They all united and escaped to face any enemy. The most critical part was securing a safe departure. MEI revealed a secret exit to Fuji, which Sagiri translated. Horai is a massive fortress model after China's Yipang Palace. It was built to refine the elixir and welcome Qin Shi Huan. In other words, entering and leaving is not impossible. The surrounding waters are swarming with monsters acting as sentries to prevent anyone from leaving. While less dangerous than the Tensen, fighting sea monsters on a ship is suicide, a fact Gontetsusai firmly confirmed. Their strategy: avoid direct combat with the Tensen, steal the elixir, and escape before being detected. Beneath Horai lie ships and a drainage gate. The sea monsters are trained not to attack vessels departing from there. According to MEI, the elixir is kept in the research lab of Rin and herself. Expecting a confrontation, Shin wanted them fully prepared. First, Gabimaru and Yuzuriha taught everyone stealth techniques. Yuzuriha teased that her seduction arts were key, much to Gontetsusai's delight. She then played the role of a beautiful instructor, demonstrating how to dilute one's Da using substitution jutsu. Seeing is believing. Her Da actually faded, making this technique perfect for infiltration. She even smacked Sagiri for a poor performance and scolded Gontetsusai for being a pervert. Gabimaru continued with his own brutal training methods. Yuzuriha joked that his talkative nature made him look like a bookworm. He then taught them how to dislocate their necks, a feat no one dared attempt. Gabimaru explained that in his village, failure to do so was certain death, and that one also had to be able to relax by cracking joints in every part of the body. Finally, he taught them how to stop their own hearts. After the lesson, Gontetsu Sai gasped for breath, while those capable of controlling the Tao, like Tomo, remained unfazed. Ever since his brother fell, Poma felt a change within. He confidently claimed he could now defeat even Gontetsu Sai, which infuriated the old swordsman. Sagiri found it bizarre that they, once enemies, were now working together. Shin intervened and split them into teams based on the 5 elements: Wu crossing, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, utilizing the cycles of mutual generation to bolster allies and mutual overcoming to weaken enemies. MEI had memorized the attributes of all Tensen: Rufa fire, Daofa wood, Jujing water, Guifa metal, and Muden and Rin earth. Each person had to memorize their elemental advantage. If they encountered a hard counter, the order was to retreat immediately. The teams were split by compatibility, one for the elixir and one for the escape route. Gabimaru approved of Shine's logical distribution. Nurugai was anxious, but Shin reassured her. Gontetsu Sai recalled that MEI also wished to leave the island. When asked if she had any regrets, as she could have left alone long ago, MEI finally spoke for herself. She said what Rin was doing was evil. He had killed so many, and their master, Sufu, did not stop him. She wanted to leave because it was terrifying, but she still wanted to ask Rin and her master why they had changed from the good people they once were. Yuzuriha thought risking their lives to talk was unwise, but MEI yearned for a normal life, a sentiment that reminded Gabimaru of his wife. He supported her and promised to take her where she needed to go. Meanwhile, the ascension ritual for Chobe was complete. When he reverted to a female form, Dafa tried to introduce herself, but was stopped by another Tensen who claimed there was no value in giving names to livestock. Infuriated, the two clashed. Chobe's strength had grown enough to block a Tensen strike, claiming he could now read their movements. Rin intervened, as Chobe was his research subject. He took Chobe to a lab designed according to Feng Shui, built upon dragon holes, nodes of Dao and dragon veins flow of Dao. Chobe was thrilled. He had adapted to Dao and realized that Rin was on a completely different level than the other Tensen. In the lab, Chobe saw a giant flower called the outer elixir flower. Elixir is refined from arborified humans, but the yield per person is minuscule. This flower could produce mass amounts of elixir, though it was unstable and would soon wither. Rin wanted to use Chobe to find a permanent solution. Chobe realized Rin intended to turn Toma and the others into nutrients for the flower. In his rage, Chobe's Dao surged in a way Rin had never seen. Rin demanded a part of Chobe's body for study, noting it would regenerate anyway, and kept him prisoner. By nightfall, Gabimaru, Yuzuriha, MEI, and Sagiri moved in first. Gontetsu Sai had complained about it being past bedtime, but Gabimaru noted that timing is a basic ninja skill. MEI agreed, explaining that the flowers close at night, which is when the Tensen's Dao is at its weakest. The plan was to scope the area. A red signal meant abort, and blue meant proceed. Fuchi had mapped the Tensen's locations. Rufai and Daofa were in the sexual chambers seeking immortality. Jujin was training physically, Duin was practicing breathing, and Guifa was meditating. The elixir was in Rin's lab, but he wouldn't be there at night. Gabimaru reiterated, "Do not engage the Tensen." They used Dao sight to navigate toward the lab, which was filled with horrifying piles of corpses. MEI looked away, but Gabimaru was unfazed. Using Yuzuriha's dilution technique, they neutralized the guards silently. Everything was going perfectly until Gabimaru peered into a room. He sensed no Tensen inside, but it was a trap. They had been ambushed. Jujin revealed they could also dilute their Dao to high. When MEI asked how they knew, Jujin revealed that Chobe had snitched. Chobe had told the Tensen about the 20 people on the island and their special abilities, even sensing Toma's Dao in the other group. To gather more Dao, Rin sent his siblings to capture them alive. Chobe agreed to reveal their entry time on one condition. That was why Jujin was waiting there. He declared they would all be sacrifices for the great ritual, the attributes offered up to their master. At that moment, the other teams were also being split up and confronted by the Tensen. Their perfect plan had crumbled. Gabimaru had no desire to fight, but backed into a corner. He had no choice but to strike. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Cat Recap channel. Today we continue the story from episode 6 of Hell's Paradise. Following the events of the previous episode, Gabimaru's group encountered the angel Ran. Their first plan was to avoid fighting this angel, while their second plan was to fight directly. Ran told MEI to return to her senior brother and master. Her senior brother initially chased her away out of pity. If she had opposed the external flower elixir, it would be meaningless now. The elixir is almost complete, And this elixir doesn't turn people into trees. We have found a refining method with the cooperation of human researchers studying external elixirs, and that has ended. We no longer had any reason to be angry with each other. We need more quality ingredients to produce large quantities, so senior brother has begun the fasting and health-preserving ritual. You don't understand senior brother's suffering, but now I think we can understand each other. MEI reply, I want to see everyone again, but now I understand. I am different from them. I can't die. I'm here to say goodbye to everyone. I'm leaving Ran Island. Hearing this, Ran said, then the sacrifice for the ritual is all of you. Gabimaru had planned to destroy the celestial being by using his Tao to counteract them, striking at Shugen's Danshin. Shin said, Gabimaru's Tao is fire, which counters Guifa's metal attribute, but it will be difficult when it encounters Ran's water. Even if you destroy his Danshin, you won't kill him. The difference in Tao between the two sides is enormous. What do you intend to do? Gabimaru told MEI and Sagiri to go into the alchemy room. Yuzuriha, I'll hold him off here, he said. Yuzuriha's path is earth, which can counter Ran's path. MEI immediately said, this isn't an alchemy hall. There are no elixirs here. Seeing this, Ran attacked Gabimaru, but he dodged. Thanks to his rigorous training, Ran's attacks were very fast and highly lethal. Just as his senior sister said, this is my path. The path of electricity, the path of inanimate objects, is easier to manipulate than that of living beings. I only need to change their form. The construction of buildings and stone statues on the island are all built by me. I adjust the paths and layout. Mimicking your invasion was too easy. The corpse's trail was the same. I disguised it to look like this. Gabimaru told Yuzuriha to use that plan and charge into battle with Ran alone. The attacks were swift and powerful, but no matter how fiercely they fought, Gabimaru couldn't finish him off. Taking advantage of the situation, Yuzuriha drew her trail from behind Ran, channeled energy into a kunai, and threw it at Ran's back, but it was blocked. Unlike the battle with Shugen, Ran said, I've stretched my Tao thin and then braided it together, making it flexible yet very strong, like a mass of muscles. Gabimaru saw that he was surrounded by a very strong protective cloak of Tao. My Tao has no gaps. It's the combination of flesh and Tao. Gabimaru seemed to be at a disadvantage against Ran when Ran used his overpowered technique. All of Gabimaru's attacks were blocked. Gabimaru observed Ran and began his plan with Yuzuriha. Ran thought he was about to lose. Ran seemed hesitant when Gabimaru said, there's another plan, but his Tao remained unchanged. You're not even sure you can scratch my muscles, Ran retorted, and Gabimaru punched him straight in the face. Ran looked surprised, while Gabimaru insisted his plan was correct, achieving initial success. The scene shifts to Rin, who needs the names of the people on the island for a purification ritual provided by Aiza Chobe. Wanting to protect her younger brother, she makes a deal with Rin to record every name, even those who are dead. The scene then moves to the battle between Shin and Nugarai against Shugen. Shugen's path is Yanwode, Shugen's path is water, and Nugarai's is also water, meaning they have no chance of winning. But the Nugarai's attacks were still effective, though his dojo was too weak. However, I could sense their anger through their dojos. I couldn't be careless. Yamato Seaman Fuchi and Tamiya Gontes Susai clashed with Daofa and Rufa in the training room. Fuchi's metal dojo countered Daofa, but neither of them had mastered the reverse dojo. Rufa's fire dojo would kill Fuchi, and the appearance of Aiza Chobe to take his younger brother Toma away. The one Rin is wary of his Gabimaru. The Tao is like a stream of water surrounding the body. The speed and magnitude of the flow will show the strength of the attribute. The difference in the direction of the flow is due to the mutually reinforcing flow, which promotes another flow to become stronger, and the opposing flow which obstructs the other. But the flow of the Tao of the celestial being is so vast that it cannot follow the rules of the ordinary. There are 3 ways to counter. 1. Instantly surpass the opponent's do, or at a specific point. 2. Temporarily weaken your own do and redirect the attack. Without the acceleration of mutual generation or the resistance of mutual destruction, we simply glide along the opponent's wave and win easily. It's not easy, but it depends on what we've learned and practiced with Nugugai, who teaches us how to use the opponent's do. Yuzuriha helps to dilute the flow of energy, controlling it regionally from Shin and ultimately harmonizing with the opponent, maintaining balance, calmness, and ferocity, keeping the mind at the center, and redirecting attacks, that is Sagiri. Diluting the flow of energy also weakens one's own defenses. Just redirecting an attack is fine, but even a graze can be fatal, and a direct hit could be fatal. Then MCC Yun, that's impressive, Ran said. I know you only started practicing the Tao when you first arrived on this island, yet you've reached this level. This island is home to many Taos, and it will awaken those close to them. But I truly admire you, a genuine talent, Gabimaru replied. You call it talent, but it was our desperate plan. After so much deliberation and struggle, it was all the sacrifices made by humans to achieve our goal of killing you. Sagiri and Mei escaped and were about to move to the elixir room, but Ran attacked them. Gabimaru kicked them in the stomach. The other celestial beings were fighting a dangerous ritual. Quick, find the elixir. Ran tried to stop him again, but Gabimaru stopped her. If you want to use my Tao, I will dilute it, she said. Then Yuzuriho appeared and slashed Ran in half. A gigantic monster was formed. The battle had just begun. It turned out to be called a zombie. This was unprecedented in centuries. He was truly outstanding. Gabimaru was a special ingredient. Rin bowed before the master and said that the base wine for the elixir was complete. First, they had to increase the seed with the help of the people on the island, then cross the sea to gather more ingredients, just as planned. They observed Ran's movements and habits. When Ran unleashed his attack, it was incredibly fast and precise, sending Gabimaru flying out of the palace. Yuzuriho was pierced by a large wound in her stomach, bleeding profusely. Mei and Sagiri were worried about Gabimaru while searching for the elixir, but Sagiri encouraged her, assuring her that he could do it. Meanwhile, Gabimaru took a beating. Unlike Jujin and Mudan, Ran retained his intelligence after transforming into a zombie. Yuzuriho remembered Gabimaru's warning that using his dojo while injured would shorten her lifespan. As Ran approached Yuzuriho, Gabimaru counterattacked with his lightning jutsu. Relying on the compatibility of their dojos, I will protect you, Yuzuriho, she replied. We are both ninjas, but I am different from you. When something happens, I only protect myself. Then Yuzuriha used a rope to pull Gabimaru towards her and retreated, saying, We'll find another opportunity. As long as we're alive, there's still a way. But Ran caught up and launched an attack, but once again, Gabimaru blocked the fatal blow, saving Yuzuriha. However, Ran, enraged, pierced Gabimaru's right chest. The ingredients for alchemy are life, but you're all too troublesome. Yuzuriha was stunned, remembering Gabimaru's words, Me too. My life is the most important thing. I have no intention of dying. I want to go home to see my wife, but now, he was covered in blood and slammed against the wall. Hello everyone, welcome to the Cat Recap channel. Today, Cat Recap will summarize episode 7 of season 2 of Hell Paradise. Meanwhile, Sagiri was worried about Gabimaru, but she still believed he could do it. The urgent task now was to get to the alchemy chamber and steal it. Meanwhile, Fuchi and Gantetsu Sai's group clash with the two angels, and as a choke, he convinces his younger brother, Toma, to join the group, saying that if Toma joins, he will achieve immortality. Gantetsu Sai pushes Toma towards Azachobe and says, Are you hesitating because of us? Fuchi then says the worst case scenario is 2 against 4. Gantetsu Sai says Toma is just a useless guy, he won't make any difference, I'll chop them all down. Fuchi immediately said, Did you encourage Toma to be so decisive? You're more soft-hearted than we thought. But Gantetsu Sai said, Don't misunderstand, a wavering enemy is easier to deal with than a wavering ally. When Toma approached his brother Azachobe, Toma smiled at Azachobe, who understood his meaning. Each of them slashed at the eyes of the two celestial beings and quickly delivered decisive blows. Azachobe praised his younger brother when Toma realized the secret signal between the two brothers was to remove their braids if they were lying, and complimented Toma on his good movements and how handsome he was becoming. Azachobe continued, To thank you for taking care of my brother, I'll leave Daofa, the celestial immortal, for you two to deal with. At this moment, the two celestial immortals recover and prepared for another fight. You have injured Daofa and me, so don't even think about leaving here. These gods spoke so eloquently, but Azachobe said we were robbers, cunning, scheming, and thieves. We are the most notorious as brothers in Iyo, Rufa was angry, just like the first time they met, but the result was the same. However, this time, he seemed to be pressured by the Aza brothers, forcing him to use his immortal technique, a sting attack on Azachobe. Azachobe quickly pulled his younger brother away just in time. Both of them pressured Rufa, making him feel like they were fighting as one. Analyzing Azachobe, he could control and utilize the way, but the one who changed the most was Toma. After hearing Gantetsusai's words to abandon all finesse and focus on the determination to take a life, Toma slashed across Rufa's face. This made him reconsider, one fighting as two. The situation was completely different from when they first met. Let's watch Daofa's match. Daofa looks so cute. The decapitation made her quite sad, but if I don't listen, Rin is terrifying. Gantetsusai saw Daofa take off her shirt and immediately exclaimed, "Beautiful bout, beautiful breasts, like a painting." Fuchi said, "You look exactly like a fairy from a fairy tale, able to regenerate and heal." Hearing this, Daofa was overjoyed. He immediately rushed forward, punched Gantetsusai in the stomach with all his might, and kicked him, causing him to cough up blood and fly away. Daofa continued, "Hearing an old man praise me gives me goosebumps." As for Fuchi, she invited him to practice martial arts because he's so cute. Fuchi slashed Daofa's hand with her sickle and said, "Sorry, but I'm more interested in what's inside you." Daofa jokingly said, "You're a pervert, but if you like, I'll show you." At this point, Gantetsusai jumped up and said, "You're my ideal type of woman. Play with me a little longer." Daofa replied, "If you like, I'll oblige." Both of them went to fight Daofa. Their sword strikes were fluid and powerful, almost defeating her. Luckily, Daofa used an invisible attack from his Dao. To defeat Daofa, they had to use a Dao counterattack to destroy her Danshin. But unlike Gabimaru and the others, he and I hadn't yet mastered Dao. Daofa immediately said, "It's been a long time since we performed the fasting and health preservation ritual, so who will be the sacrificial offering for today's ceremony? A super strong old man or a super fast young man?" In Fuchi's mind, just as he thought, the Dao is not something that can be seen with the naked eye, so to use it in combat, not only invisible attacks but also defenses are useless. The immortal before him is named Daofa. Her Dao is wood, mine is metal, incompatible with hers. This is an advantage, but since we cannot use the Dao, our advantage will be weakened. Gantetsusai immediately shouted, "Don't talk about the Dao in front of me. It's too much trouble, I can't remember it, don't ruin my mood. Things are only just beginning to get interesting. I said the Dao is very important. I can read, interpret, and use it to attack in the direction I want. Without the Dao, you can't win. I'd be very happy if you transformed into the Dao." Gantetsusai said, "You're happy too, aren't you? You've tormented humans for 1,000 years." Daofa's expression changed. "I don't like it at all. Living here, cultivating eternal immortality, seducing humans as a source of nourishment, doing this for 1,000 years, but we know that even with another 1,000 years, we can't cultivate perfect immortality. If we don't laugh, we'll go crazy, or are we laughing because we've already lost something?" He immediately used his Dao to attack Gantetsusai and Fuchi, injuring both of them. Fuchi said, "I didn't expect Dao to be so powerful." I said, "I think you'd rather die peacefully than be tortured like this." Fuchi said, "It's a surprising discovery. If we could bring it back, medicine would be completely disrupted." Gantetsusai stood up and said, "Playing with a new toy is truly amazing." Both of them rushed at me. I used Dao, but this time Gantetsusai sensed it and dodged. Taking advantage of the situation, he slashed at Iofa's face, but was hit by another blow. Iofa said, "You didn't feel anything, Fuchi, you just got lucky." Gantetsusai remembered Shien's words. All three were too stubborn, all three didn't believe in things they couldn't see. They couldn't control Dao with their minds. They had to escape reality and entrust themselves to their senses. Daofa was about to finish off Gantetsusai when Fuchi came to his aid. Gantetsusai told Fuchi, "I saw it," but Fuchi said, "It was just luck, focus, if you can see it. We'll have the advantage." Daofa said, "Are you going to take the blows like that just for that guy to observe?" "How cute," Fuchi said. "Maybe we're not teammates, but we're almost." Gantetsusai unexpectedly said, "You're the executioner." "How can you say that?" Fuchi said, "I care about Toma a lot too." don't I? Fuchi continued. I understand my position. I don't want to justify you guys, but we touched upon it, and even executioners are human. The deeper we delved, the more emotions arose during this harsh time. We opened our hearts, felt, and analyzed it. Once we understood, we saw no difference. Samurai and criminals are the same. They both have flesh, blood, and bones, and they both want to live. I'll only say once, I want you to survive. I'll say it again, if you're not my comrades, then death won't be a sad thing. Gantetsusai couldn't see anything, but he was certain Fuchi was in danger. Remembering Shien's words to entrust himself to his senses to escape reality, Gantetsusai gouged out his own eye. The reason he could sense the doubt that moment was because blood had blurred his vision. Now, Gantetsusai advanced with one eye blurred and the other gouged out. He couldn't see anything, but he could clearly sense the doubt and save Fuchi. Gantetsusai was able to sense and dodge everything.